They fired me on a Monday morning, without warning, without explanation. Just a cold conference room, 2 stone-faced managers, and a stack of HR paperwork. What stung the most wasn't the termination. It was the lie behind it. They said it was due to performance concerns. But I'd been the top sales rep for 3 quarters in a row. Everyone knew that. What they didn't tell me was that my boss's nephew, a fresh college grad with 0 experience, got promoted into my position that same afternoon. Yeah. That's when I knew. This wasn't about performance. It was personal, political, strategic. And I was disposable. Before I tell you how I turned the tables, without breaking a single rule, hit that subscribe button if you're into true-sounding stories of revenge, betrayal, and dramatic comebacks. Because what happened next will blow your mind. I gave that company everything. 5 years of loyalty. Late nights. Weekends. I even postponed my honeymoon for a product launch. But none of that mattered. Because in the end, I was just a name on a spreadsheet. A box to check before the new guy walked in. You want to know what real betrayal feels like? It's when your own team claps for your replacement, while you're still packing your desk. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. They thought they buried me. But they didn't realize I was a seed. Wanna hear what happened next? I started at that company when it was barely a blip on the map. Back then, it was me, the founder, and a handful of hungry 20-somethings packed into a 2-room office above a Thai restaurant. We believed in the mission. We stayed up until 2 a.m. designing slides, chasing leads, fixing bugs, doing whatever it took. I was there when we landed our first $1 million client. I helped build the CRM from scratch. I trained every single new hire in the sales department, including the guy who ended up replacing me. Let that sink in. He shadowed me for 2 weeks. I showed him how to handle clients, how to pitch without sounding like a robot, even how to navigate the politics in leadership meetings. But that didn't stop him from smiling while taking my seat. And you know what really broke me? The silence. Not a single co-worker stood up for me. Not Sarah from HR, who used to vent to me about her divorce. Not Daniel from marketing, who I covered for when he missed deadlines. Not even Jess, who I helped get promoted last year. They all looked the other way. Because speaking up would have risked their jobs. And in that office, self-preservation was the only culture left. I went home that night feeling numb. My wife tried to talk to me, but I couldn't find the words. I just kept staring at my hands, the same hands that built that company's sales machine. Now empty. But sometimes, when they burn everything to the ground, they forget one thing. The ashes are yours to do with as you please. And I was ready to rise. 3 days after I was fired, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something in my gut told me to answer. It was him. The nephew. The kid they gave my job to. "Hey, man," he started, like we were old buddies. "I know things ended. Weird. But I was hoping you could walk me through the Q4 pipeline. I'm kinda, lost." I just sat there for a second. Blinking. Trying to process the audacity. He took my job. He watched me get humiliated, walked out by security like some criminal. And now he wanted my help? I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just said, "You'll figure it out," and hung up. I could have blocked his number. I could have gone dark. But no. I did something better. I started watching them. From the outside. See, the company made a fatal mistake when they let me go. They forgot I was the architect. Every major deal, every client relationship, every back-end process, I had my fingerprints on it all. And I knew things. Things they didn't even realize were critical until they started breaking. Like how their biggest client, Sinclair Tech, was this close to pulling out if we didn't hit certain KPIs by November. Or how the CRM flagged duplicate leads that the new intern was now sending out as fresh prospects, tanking our reputation. They thought they could replace me with a resume and a last name. But I wasn't just an employee. I was the damn system. And if they wanted to play games, I was about to show them what losing really looked like. When you spend 5 years inside a company, really inside it, you don't just learn the playbook. You learn the people. What makes them tick. What they're hiding. Who's protecting who. And trust me, they had plenty to hide. Let's start with Martin, the VP of Sales. The same guy who signed off on firing me. He was skimming bonuses, rerouting commission checks by accident, then adjusting the books a month later once no one was watching. I had the emails, screenshots, PDFs of payroll reports he never meant anyone to see. I never said anything while I was employed. I thought it wasn't my business. But now? It was personal. Then there was the COO, Diane. She was technically my boss's boss. On paper, she was clean. Corporate darling. Always polished. But she had a soft spot for personal favors. Like awarding vendor contracts to her sister's fake LLC, or approving expense reports for flights that had nothing to do with work. All of this, I kept it. Every file. Every thread. Every quiet little detail they thought had disappeared when I left. It was sitting on an encrypted drive in my closet, gathering dust. Until now. See, I wasn't just going to go out with a bang. I was going to make sure that every single person who played a part in stabbing me in the back felt the blade, too. But I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted justice. Real, poetic justice, the kind that unfolds slowly, publicly, and with receipts. And the first domino? It was about to fall. I spent a full weekend reviewing everything I had, organizing files, cross-referencing emails, backing up every detail twice. Then I created a brand new burner email account with no ties to me whatsoever. No name, no traceable IP, nothing. On Monday morning, I wrote a single, concise message. To whom it may concern. Attached are documents detailing financial misconduct by senior staff, including fraudulent expense reports, manipulated commissions, and vendor favoritism. You may want to audit the following departments: sales, finance, and operations. Best regards. A concerned former employee. I attach the files. Every single one. And send it straight to the company's board of directors. No threats. No rants. Just facts. By noon, I saw the first ripple. Martin, the smug VP of sales, suddenly canceled his afternoon meetings. I still had access to the public-facing team calendars. Then Diane postponed her all-hands address for the first time in 3 years. Slack statuses started flipping to offline like lights going out during a storm. By Wednesday, whispers were hitting LinkedIn. Some cryptic posts from employees. Crazy week. Time to update the resume. You never know who's watching. I smiled. But I wasn't done yet. Because karma is good. But strategy is better. I knew they'd launch an internal investigation, but I also knew how slow the board moved. And that gave me time. Time to line up the next part of the plan. Something that would hit them where it really hurts. Their reputation. You see, corporate scandals behind closed doors are bad. But public exposure? That's lethal. The company didn't say a word publicly. No press release. No internal memo acknowledging the whistleblower report. They acted like nothing had happened, like they could just keep business as usual. But clients were noticing. One of them, a senior VP at Sinclair Tech, our biggest account, emailed me directly. He wrote, "Heard you're no longer with them. Damn shame. You built that team. Let me know if you land somewhere else, would love to follow." That was the moment I realized I had more power than I thought. So I started making calls. Quiet ones. Strategic ones. I reached out to 3 major clients I had personal relationships with. I didn't badmouth anyone. Didn't sound bitter. I just told them the truth. That I was no longer with the company, that internal changes had affected the structure of their accounts, and that, should they feel underserved, I'd be open to new opportunities. 2 out of 3 were immediately interested. Meanwhile, I was crafting something else. A short, professional, and very damning article, titled, "Inside the Toxic Culture of a Fast-Growing Tech Firm." It was written like a third-party exposé. No names. No lawsuits. Just facts. Leaked emails. Documented fraud. Quotes from anonymous insiders, which, of course, were just carefully edited versions of my own words. I pitched it to a well-known business blog under a pseudonym. They ran it within 72 hours. And then, everything exploded. The article went viral. Comments poured in from former employees, adding their own stories. Glassdoor reviews tripled overnight, all negative. But the most satisfying part? Watching their CEO tweet about baseless rumors and internet trolls. Because behind the PR spin, he knew exactly who was behind it. And he knew this wasn't over. A week after the article dropped, I got a call from a number I recognized instantly. It was HR. But not the woman who escorted me out, this time it was someone higher up. A compliance officer I'd only met once during an ethics training 2 years ago. He didn't waste time. "Look," he said. "We'd like to make this right. We're offering you a financial settlement, along with a formal acknowledgement that your departure could have been handled more respectfully." Translation? Please stop the bleeding. They wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement, tight, ironclad, hush money with a pretty bow. $40,000. At one point in my life, I would have taken that money. Used it to take a breather. Maybe go on that honeymoon my wife and I had postponed for 3 years. But not now. Now it felt like blood money. A last-ditch attempt to patch up a sinking ship with duct tape and hope. I said no. Then I said something that made him pause. "You're not trying to protect the company," I told him. "You're trying to protect the people who broke it. I'm not afraid of them." Silence. Then. "Well. Then I hope you know what you're doing." I did. Because what they didn't realize was that I was no longer interested in playing defense. I was building something better. I'd already registered my own LLC. I was in talks with 2 of our old clients. And I had 3 former co-workers, good people, who reached out privately, asking if I had room for them. The company fired me to make space for nepotism. But in doing so, they created their biggest competitor. I hadn't planned on starting my own firm. Not at first. I just wanted to expose the rot, to shine a light on the betrayal, the lies, the hypocrisy. But once people started reaching out, it all shifted. First was Priya. Brilliant analyst. Quiet. Overlooked. She DM'd me on LinkedIn 2 days after the article dropped. I read the piece. I knew things were bad, but I didn't realize how bad. If you're building something. I want in. Then came Marcus. Operations wizard. He'd been stuck under Diane's thumb for years, doing 3 people's jobs for a fraction of what he was worth. His message? "I can't work under them anymore. You always treated people with respect. If there's a spot on your team, I'll take a pay cut." That hit me. Because I remembered what it felt like to be seen. To matter. And suddenly, the idea of starting over didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like freedom. I cashed out a portion of my savings. Enough to rent a small office space, get basic branding, and hire 2 people. Within 2 weeks, we had a name, a logo, and our first client, Sinclair Tech. They didn't even hesitate. "Send over the contract," their VP said. They didn't care about the headlines. They cared about results. And they knew I could deliver. Back at my old company, layoffs had quietly begun. Morale was crashing. Leads were drying up. The nephew? Word was, he'd been demoted to junior account rep. Funny how fast things change. I didn't lift a finger to hurt them. All I did was stand back and tell the truth. And the truth? It was more powerful than anything I could have planned. You know what's funny about nepotism? It might get you a job, but it won't keep you there. That kid, my old boss's nephew, was completely out of his depth. No real skills, no grit, just a name on a paycheck. Within 2 months, his performance was so poor that clients started complaining. Missed deadlines. Miscommunications. The kind of mistakes that make people rethink their contracts. Meanwhile, the rest of the team was falling apart. People who'd been loyal for years were quietly slipping away. Burned out. Disillusioned. Some called it the Great Exodus. From where I stood, running my new firm, I watched the old company hemorrhage talent and clients. The culture they built? Toxic. Their reputation? Tarnished. And the CEO? He was too busy spinning stories in the press to fix the real problems. Here's the kicker, I still had friends inside. They sent me updates. Off-the-record messages about morale, mismanagement, and fear. But no one dared speak publicly anymore. The silence was louder than any protest. And through it all, I stayed focused on my own path. Building a team based on trust, integrity, results. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Not nepotism. Not politics. But people. About 6 months after I launched my own firm, I got a call that surprised me. It was from an executive at a major competitor, a company twice the size of my old employer. They'd been watching the chaos unfold. Watching how I'd quietly rebuilt trust with clients and created a positive work culture. Their offer was clear: join them as a senior director with a substantial raise, a seat at the leadership table, and freedom to build my own team. It was tempting. More money. More resources. A chance to leave the drama behind. But I hesitated. Because I knew what I wanted was bigger than a title or a paycheck. I wanted to create something lasting. Something built on respect and fairness. So I told them no. Instead, I doubled down on my small company. I hired more people who had been burned by toxic workplaces. I invested in training, mentoring, and culture building. And slowly, we grew. Word spread that this was a place where your work was valued, not just your last name. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. And the irony? My old boss's nephew was nowhere to be found. One late afternoon, about 8 months after everything went down, my phone buzzed again. Caller ID, unknown number. I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. It was my old boss. The man who fired me without a second thought. His voice was hesitant, almost ashamed. "Listen," he said, "I've been following what you're doing. I won't lie, I was wrong to push you out. The company's in a mess. And honestly, you were the glue holding it together." There was silence on my end. Part of me wanted to tell him off. But instead, I asked, "Why are you calling me now?" He sighed. "I want to make amends. Maybe even talk about a possible partnership." I laughed softly. "Too late for that," I told him. "I'm building something new, something better. But I appreciate the call." The truth? It felt good to hear those words. To be recognized. But it was also a reminder of how far I'd come. From being discarded like yesterday's news, to being respected by the very people who once doubted me. That call wasn't a reconciliation. It was a confirmation. I was no longer the man they wanted to throw away. I was the man they wished they'd never lost. Starting over was tough, no sugarcoating that. But the hardest part wasn't the late nights or the tight budgets. It was finding people who actually cared. I wanted a team that felt like more than just coworkers, like a family. People who showed up not just to collect a paycheck, but to build something meaningful. That meant hiring differently. Looking beyond resumes and degrees. Hiring those who had been overlooked, underestimated, or mistreated elsewhere. Priya and Marcus, of course, were the first to join. Then came Laura, a marketing whiz who left after years of being ignored. And Jamal, a developer who quit because of burnout. We didn't just work together. We supported each other. We celebrated small wins and picked each other up on tough days. And the results showed. Our clients noticed the difference. Retention rates soared. Projects finished on time, often ahead of schedule. I realized that the real victory wasn't just winning back clients or making money. It was creating a place where people wanted to stay. Where loyalty wasn't forced, it was earned. And that's something no nepotism or office politics can ever buy. Success breeds envy, and I learned that the hard way. A few months after our little company started gaining real traction, I got wind that my old employer wasn't ready to let me go quietly. One morning, I received an email from a supposed client, a company I'd never heard of, complaining about missed deadlines and poor communication. I checked every record. No projects, no contracts, no conversations. It was a clear attempt at sabotage. But I kept my cool. Instead of reacting publicly, I quietly investigated. With help from a few savvy friends, I traced the email back to a disgruntled former employee at my old company, someone still bitter about the changes. I forwarded everything to my legal team and prepared a formal cease and desist. Meanwhile, I doubled down on transparency. Every client communication was crystal clear. Every project update logged and shared. Word spread that we operated with integrity, and the fake complaint only made us look stronger. Their last attempt to hurt me only pushed me higher. And that, my friend, is how you turn poison into power. You might be wondering why I'm sharing all of this. After all, it's a tale of betrayal, revenge, and drama, not exactly the typical success story. But here's the thing, I want anyone watching who feels stuck, overlooked, or betrayed at work to know this: you're not alone. And you're not powerless. Sometimes, the worst moments in your career can become the catalyst for your greatest victories. Losing my job was painful. It shook my confidence. It made me question my worth. But it also forced me to confront the truth: I deserved better. I deserved respect. I deserved a workplace that valued me, not just my output. And so I built it. Not by breaking rules or burning bridges. But by standing firm, speaking truth, and surrounding myself with people who shared my values. If you're in a toxic environment, remember, you have options. You have power. And sometimes, walking away is the first step toward walking towards something incredible. So if you're ready to take that step, I'm rooting for you. And hey, if you want to hear more real stories like this, Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the journey doesn't end here. Today, my company is thriving. We're small but growing fast, with a culture built on trust, respect, and transparency. I'm not just the CEO, I'm a mentor, a leader, and a believer in second chances. Every day, I remind myself why I started this journey, to create a place where people feel valued, where loyalty is earned, not demanded. Where talent isn't overshadowed by politics or nepotism. Where hard work meets fairness. Looking back, losing the job was the hardest thing I've ever faced. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes, when a door closes, it's not the end. It's a new beginning. If you're watching this and struggling with your own workplace drama, remember, your story isn't over yet. You have the power to rewrite the ending. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and empower. Until next time.